Today on the Tech Bytes podcast, we dive into digital experience monitoring and internet performance monitoring with sponsor Catchpoint. Now, as more users are relying on SaaS and cloud for applications, the internet has essentially become a business critical network. But how can you, a network engineer, be expected to manage the internet? Enter Internet Performance Monitoring, or IPM. We're going to talk with Catchpoint about its approach to IPM, how it measures performance and then reports it back to you, and get specific examples of what Catchpoint can do. Our guest is Leo Vasiliou, Director of Product Marketing at Catchpoint. And unless you worry that Leo's just here to market at you, he comes from the DevOps trenches and has the scars to prove it. So we're going to have a good technical conversation. Leo, welcome to the podcast. Can you just give us a 30-second overview of Catchpoint to get folks some context?
First, thank you very much for having me. And jumping right in, we talk about Catchpoint as the Internet Performance Monitoring Platform. As you already hinted at, growth in internet centricity is worsening our visibility into the internet stack, and that is the primary problem we solve for, that loss of visibility. And here at Catchpoint, we simply believe that the internet and the internet stack needs to be resilient, that is, be able to adapt to or withstand adverse conditions.
Now, you mentioned IPM, Internet Performance Monitoring. Is that okay? So I've been doing monitoring for years, and we called it NPM, Network Performance Monitoring. Is IPM distinct from that?
Yes, absolutely, right? So think about something like old school application monitoring. You install these agents, collect your metrics, logs, events, traces, and eventually we came to talk about that as observability, so we don't have to say and list all those different capabilities. For networking, we would talk about flow, packet capture, Wireshark, SNMP, syslogs, and the like. And that evolved into a concatenated discipline, NPM, right? Network performance monitoring, network performance management, depending on how you think about it. And if we conversationally say the internet is your new network, and we talk about things like BGP monitoring, DNS monitoring, anything as a service monitoring, external network paths, peering, this is evolved into IPM to account for this new internet is your new network. Main difference being an internet-centric focus for reliability and resilience.
So internet focused, as in, does that mean you're monitoring things? Well, you mentioned BGP. So if there's a change in the BGP routing table that significantly impacts the connectivity between me and some SaaS service I'm trying to get to, Catchpoint would know that?
You are correct. So a flap, a hijack, I mean, essentially the idea is that from wherever people access your sites, your apps, your services, we want to be able to help you keep an eye on that. So if the fit does hit the shin, you can figure out why that happened.
Got it. Okay.
So you mentioned resilience earlier, and that sounds nice, but what do you actually mean about internet resilience? Can you put a little more meat on that?
You know why that is such a great question? Because I don't want that term resilience to become yet another term that sales and marketing bastardize, in the vein that
You might be too late, Leo, but go ahead.
in the vein that monitoring and meeting all of your internal service level objectives does not necessarily mean your users across the globe are having a good experience. We wanted to create these pillars to incrementally account for a state of resilience, again, the capacity to adapt or withstand adversity, but also include that outside in perspective. And so the four pillars are availability, performance, reliability, and arguably the most important, reachability. And it's that last one that catalyzes the fact these four pillars apply to way more than just your internal clouds, data centers, etc.
Well, we would dig into that. Okay, reachability, because to me that's the obvious one, right? Obviously, I've got to be able to reach the thing, and then what becomes interesting about the path between me and the thing I'm trying to reach would be availability, performance, reliability, maybe. But you're really saying reachability is the thing.
I guess I am when I hear you put it that way. It The way I think about it is it is in a single word, right? Remember we were talking about earlier encapsulating capabilities into as short a term as possible. In a single word, it is what makes us think about the internet as part of the picture, so people can work to avoid this gravity of inward in or inside out focus of all of the internal. Everything internal is green, but users are still complaining situation.
Yeah, because you can, reach a site, but that doesn't mean you're getting good performance out of all of the hops in between you and that site, right? That's what you're
Or
talking
vice
about.
versa, vice versa. What good is a brightly burning sun if its rays cannot reach you on the beach? What good is a high availability, high performing application data center if your services can't reach users wherever they are in the world? 100%.
So,
Okay.
so for example, Drew and I use Zoom all the time. We spend a lot of time in Zoom meetings, and every once in a while, one of the whoever of us that are online will be getting, oh, internet connection's unstable. And where's the problem? Who knows? Is it the Wi-Fi in the house? Is it a middle mile somewhere? Because not all of us are experiencing internet unstable. Occasionally, it is Zoom. Zoom's actually experiencing an outage that affected everybody on the call. But drilling into what's actually going on, so you can diagnose it, is a painful process if you've got no insights and you can't see anything.
Head nodding, head nodding. That is excellent playback.
Yeah, how is Catchpoint doing this when you say you monitor the internet? Because that's a pretty big claim.
I suppose I have to start with what is the corest, most foundational aspect and critical success factor for the way to think about implementations, IPM implementations. If I may ask to picture a globe with thousands of dots in hundreds of cities, in hundreds of countries, and hundreds of ISP combinations, what you are visualizing is what we refer to as our network of intelligent agents from where telemetry is collected. Now, what makes this agent network so unique is the different types, grades, classes of ISPs and points of interconnection that we have those agents distributed across. Yes, we have hundreds of cloud agents and cloud providers, but they don't do much more than ensure your app and your cloud infrastructure is available. That's why we have agents on the backbone, broadband ISPs, why we have agents on the last mile eyeball networks, why we have agents on wireless multi-access, 5G, et cetera, to see and have troubleshooting capabilities across the entire internet and internet stack to be able to answer questions like, hey, is this a problem with me or my stuff, or is the internet having a bad day? If so, where? If so, why? So it all starts with an extremely large, arguably the largest network of intelligent agents around the globe.
Okay, so we've got a big network of intelligent agents. I love the fact that you might be able to tell me if I'm on some tier two regional network, the way things are laid out here in North America. You could tell me it's like, yeah, it's your regional provider, buddy. We got an agent on that network, and it's them. They're having a bad day, and I assume more specifically, you could say they're having a bad day at one of their junction points that connects them to this specific tier one backbone. We are seeing significant packet loss on the interconnect between your provider and where they interconnect to some tier one backbone.
That's right. Tier one backbone, tier two that buys traffic, anything like that. And, now that we've kind of painted a picture visually of agents, I mean, I guess I'll just pick a semi-arbitrary capability, DNS, BGP. There are many protocols we could talk about, but DNS, for example, right? We think of more things being bought as a service. And I think about a year ago, I saw a data point that 79% of organizations use at least one third-party DNS provider, and 64% said even though those endpoints are from third-party providers, that they should still monitor them. And I would reference Google multi-party dilemma with Sarah Butt and Alex Elman. They tell a wonderful story about that dilemma better than I could. But let's say so, all these agents all over the world, different points of interconnection. What is the IP address of catchpoint.com? And that takes 10 milliseconds, 20 milliseconds, something like that. Good black box monitor. Probably a lot of people do it. But what if that response time, that DNS resolution time goes up to a second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, whatever? Um, Enter another thing where we kind of go above and beyond what people are typically used to. So, DNS as a full resolver monitor. So level one is to your TLD. Level two might be your name servers. Level three might be Akamai's traffic manager. Level four might be Akamai's regional POPs and so on and so forth. So we'll turn that black box data into a white box data where you can break down by different levels and more importantly, take specific action on those specific levels depending on what priority you place on it during your triage.
So stupid example, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If I get the spinny thing on Netflix and the video won't start, can you tell me what cache it was probably coming out of and why it was slow?
Well, if you've already got the spinny thing, that means you've probably already established a DNS connection. So then what I might do is I might start looking at some of the other metrics that we capture. In that case, if you can even get to the server, then you'd look at the load time, right? What we call the response time. Or if you can't, then let's just go back and talk about reachability some more.
Okay.
Other examples, can you do trace routing?
A trace route, yeah. So, and I'm sorry I keep going back to the network of agents, but again, just kind of keep that in mind as we talk about trace routes. So
Yeah.
probably people expect us to be able to do trace routes across, TCP, UDP, and the like. But one of the other things that we do that's kind of unique when we think about the evolution, higher demand for performance, right? My kid's screaming when he's playing Fortnite, L4S, right? Low latency, low loss scale. So what we do with our trace route, among some of the other things, is we allow you to set ECN flags, so you can see whether or not ECN is being bleached. And if I
ECN,
could just
explicit
reference
congestion notification.
explicit congestion notification, and we actually did a study of what regions were better or worse at ECN bleaching. And I would say just Google ECN bleaching Catchpoint to see the data. But it's just absolutely fascinating. Just another example of where we kind of go above and beyond what's expected for, excuse me.
Bleaching, as in the ECN notification is dropped at some point, so
Is
the
being
remote site doesn't
dropped.
know that there's an issue.
And I'll venture to say that you would be surprised where the U.S. placed on that naughty list.
So this is a deliberate attempt to try to hide the fact that there is some kind of issue along the path.
Because also, the ECN has to be supported across the entire path too, right? So we can't forget that, but that's exactly right. So think companies whose revenue comes from streaming, right? They want it to be as fast as possible. Well, the big boys, I don't want to put anybody on the spot. They're trying to get this L4S to be more recognized, more standard across the board. And so what we do with our trace route allows them to do that.
You also mentioned BGP monitoring. Can you dig into that a little bit more about what the services are you can provide?
BGP, right? So we take sources from RIPES, RIS, route views. So they publish that in 15-minute increments. And then we have our own Catchpoint peers, which we built to try to get that BGP info in as near real time as possible. And then if you want to become part of our partner program, then you can apply, send us your info, and then you can do use cases, for example, for your internal BGP egress. What's that look like? So for preferences originating from inside your network, it's useful to triage problems where calls might be coming from inside the house versus outside, just as an example. So hijacks, flaps, I think I mentioned convergence delays already, black holes, boo-boos in traffic shaping, traffic engineering and the like, right? BGP monitoring, one of our core use cases.
So it's in hijacking then. If someone's doing that bogus announcement for some prefix that they don't actually own, you can detect that it did happen and who's responsible?
And I suppose we probably should also say that we do want to raise awareness of this, that BGP compared to maybe DNSSEC, another one of the protocols we support monitor for, is more vulnerable than people think, but you are correct, right? All of a sudden, what the frick happened to my traffic, or what should we do with our traffic? Because our page views dropped and our CMO is freaking out because conversions just dropped to 0 or something like that, just if we had to talk about it in a business context.
So Leo, Gartner recently released a Magic Quadrant for digital experience monitoring, and Catchpoint is in that MQ on the IPM side. Are we at the point where this sector needs a full Magic Quadrant?
Yes, we are, and yes, Gartner did. I would stress that is in fact their first ever Magic Quadrant on digital experience monitoring, talking about capabilities like internet performance monitoring, real user correlation, and I absolutely do think it does speak to the evolution we've been jamming on for the last few minutes, as we were mentioning earlier. The whole internet is your new network mantra, and the fact that an outside-in approach should be a priority. I absolutely do think we need this.
All right. Well, that does bring us to the end of our time. If we've piqued folks' interest in Catchpoint, where can they go to find out more?
Please visit us at catchpoint.com/techbytes. And again, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one more time, catchpoint.com/techbytes. And Leo, thanks for joining us. And we thank Catchpoint for being a sponsor. If you like this episode, there are many more fine, free technical podcasts and our community blog. It's all at packetpushers.net. You can follow Ethan and I on LinkedIn. You can hear all these podcasts on Spotify. And if you would, leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts, but it helps. And last but not least, remember that too much networking would never be enough.